You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 56. Cubs ambush the O's. Crawly, it's not just an ambush, it's a sweep. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook, or email us, flythew670@gmail.com. Well, if that doesn't get you headed in the right direction on a Thursday into a Friday, I don't know what will. As Crawly, the Cubs have swept the Orioles, not only a sweep, but a shutout in back-to-back games. How you feeling, pal?
Dustin, I got to go back and look at the video. Did we say last time we predicted the Cubs were going to sweep the Orioles?
No, I think we might have said 2 out of 3 based on the pitching matchups. I think I said 2 out of 3 based on the pitching matchups, but then when they changed things up, I was not feeling 2 out of 3, and here we are with a sweep. Get out the brooms.
Dustin, it wasn't even just a sweep. It's how they swept. It was the dominance that the Cubs had. You're talking about the last place team in the NL Central taking on the first place team in the entire American League when this series started. And it was just shocking. You know, the Cubs have had good pitching all season long, really, other than like April was a little shaky. But the starting pitching is what has even kept them from being even in worse shape than they are. But, you know, the hitting, we've been saying, when is it going to click? When is it going to click? And now we kind of got something going here.
Yeah, we absolutely do have something going here. The Cubs have won 3 in a row, and they are going to head to St. Louis now. They're going to jump on Air Ricketts. 4 big games coming up down there, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But Crawly, let's walk everybody through it. We had a pitching change for Game 1. It was supposed to be Shota Imanaga going Game 1, the All-Star, but instead they let him rest a day, and they started Jameson Taillon on game number 1. That takes us back to Tuesday night, 5:35 first pitch.
Yeah, Jameson Taillon versus Dean Kremer, and it didn't take long for the Cubs to get on the board. Michael Busch hit a solo bomb on the first pitch he saw from Dean Kremer. This was his 12th home run of the season, and Dustin, the 5th time he's hit a first pitch homer. The Cubs added a run in the second when the Cubs loaded the bases with 1 out, and Thomas Nido did a good job putting the ball in play. Sac fly made it a 2-0 Cubs lead. The Cubs almost got a few more, but right fielder Anthony Santander, who was just named to the All-Star team, he wasn't originally on it, but he made a couple nice plays to rob the Cubs of more runs. So 2-0, not feeling comfortable with that against the Orioles. They would come back with a leadoff home run by Jordan Westburg to make it 2-1. But the Cubs were able to score some more runs thanks to some uncharacteristic bad defense. We talked on the last episode, I mean, just how good Baltimore was in every facet of the game. But with 1 out, Cody Bellinger hit one that was headed right to shortstop Gunnar Henderson. But we've talked about this before. The pitcher, Dean Kremer, deflected the ball. If he just leaves the ball pass, it's right in Henderson's glove. He deflects it. Now Henderson has to make an off-balance throw. That lands in the camera well to put Belly on second. And then Seiya would hit a soft single to make it 3-1 Cubs. Ian Happ would walk, and Christopher Morel would reach on a fielding error by third baseman Ramon Urias. So Dansby Swanson would ground out to third. Seiya would score to make it 4-0. But it was good to see, Dustin, the Cubs taking advantage of some very uncharacteristic Baltimore errors.
Yep, they took advantage. That's not something they do, but that's what you've got to do in order to put this kind of a winning streak together. So, kudos to the Cubs, who we've given a lot of crap to, well-deserved. But when they do good things, we're going to tip the cap as well.
And again, against a great team that really, when they make those errors, you better take advantage because it doesn't happen often. Now, there's no way the Orioles were just going to lay down. Bottom of the third, Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman hit back-to-back singles to put runners at the corners with no out. But Anthony Santander, who ended the Cubs rallies a couple times with great defensive plays, was robbed by Miles Masterboni, right? Continues to make fantastic plays at third base. Henderson scored to cut the Cubs lead to 4-2, but it definitely killed a potential rally. Ian Happ also made a nice play to end the game. But Dustin, that's one of those plays, that play that Masterboni makes that Pat Hughes, the Hall of Famer, always kind of talks about turning point moments. And you know what? It was Craig Counsell who pointed it out after the game was over. He made it a point. Listen to this audio clip. You know, they're asking him about the game and he's talking about it, but then they were about to go into something else, and he interjected. Listen to this.
Those guys have been swinging it good, and both in a really good place. I mean, can I just point out Miles Mastrobuoni's play as well, because that, it's a 4-1 game at that point, but there's no outs. It's first and third, and to turn that inning into just a one-run inning, and we're back in the dugout. I thought that was a real game changer. They'd kind of snuck 2 ground balls through, and really looked like they could sneak a third through, and that play I thought was a huge play, just to give James one easy inning again, get us back in the dugout, and really shut down a possible big inning with their middle of their order coming up.
So again, like he said, there's kind of 2 seeing-eyed ground ball singles that put the runners on the corners. And if that gets by Mastrobuoni, you may give up a run. It could be bases loaded, no outs with the heart of the order. And it was a really, really, all 3 games were played under very difficult conditions to pitch. And what Craig is talking about is just getting back in the dugout instead of those long, super long innings where these guys get drained. It was a huge play. Even though the Cubs were up 4-2, you know that the Orioles are one of the best teams. They got a potent offense. Cubs had to keep scoring, and that's what they did. They left runners at first and third in the second, and the bases loaded in the third, and you hope that those wouldn't come back to bite the Cubs. Top of the fourth, Nico is hit by a pitch, and Michael Busch singled, but Cody Bellinger grounded out, and Seiya Suzuki struck out. But with 2 outs, Ian Happ does what he's been doing lately, crushing 3-run homers to put the Cubs up 7-2. Dustin, that one felt like the dagger. That was Happ's 5th 3-home run in his last 22 games. No doubter. Landed on Utah Street.
Yeah, pretty cool how that works out. Yeah, explain it.
Yeah, and so Taylor McGregor did a great job explaining it on the broadcast. Any ball that makes it on that street, they take an estimation, they put a marking where it is, and then they put kind of like this bronze inlet into the ground that'll say, Ian Happ, Cubs, and then the date of the home run. So very, very cool. And Ian Happ is just hitting 3-run bombs. That's huge.
Yep, that was a huge, huge home run. And he has gotten hot at the right time, and he's going to continue to be hot all through this series.
Now, with all that run support, Jameson Taillon was cruising. He handled that strong Orioles lineup. He threw his 6th consecutive quality starts, pitching 6 innings, giving up 2 runs on 4 hits, 1 walk, 7 Ks. After the big Miles Mastrobuoni double play ball in the third, he sat down the next 10 Orioles hitters he faced. Bullpen was also excellent. Tyson Miller pitched a scoreless inning. Mark Leiter returned from the IL in the 8th. And Hunter Biggie, oh man, Biggie, can't you see? He's up because Colton Brewer broke his hand hitting the dugout wall. I mean, absolutely. Look at this, Dustin. This is what we need. You're looking at these pitches, 98.4, 98.7, 98.8, 99.9. His first strikeout came on a pitch that hit triple digits, 100 miles per hour. Welcome to the show, Hunter Biggie.
I did not have Crawly rapping on my bingo card in the didn't have it in the 56th episode of season 3. Crawly rap. No.
The Cubs offense scored 9 runs on 14 hits, 5 walks, and 1 hit by pitch, 4 for 17 with runners in scoring positions. The Orioles had 2 runs on only 5 hits. They had 2 errors. Michael Busch was 4 for 4, and every Cub in the lineup had a hit for Dansby Swanson. That will play.
That will play nicely. No, nothing to really be upset about. I mean, he'd like to be a little better than 4 for 17 with runners in scoring position, but when you get to fly the W, it works out. And Jameson Taillon with that nice quality start. I could argue with some of those numbers for the quality starts, but that was a quality start, no doubt about it. All right, speaking of quality starts, game number 2, an unbelievable pitching matchup. 5:35 again, the first pitch. The reason I'm mentioning that, Crawly, is I can't decide. I get up, if you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to the Mully and Haw show. I get up every day at 2:30. And believe it or not, I'm not quite sure about the 5:35 first pitch. It's kind of like right around dinner time, trying to get everybody together, kind of setting your evening, the plan for the rest of, the next 4 or 5 hours of your day. And all of a sudden the Cubs game starts and it's like, oh, damn, it's starting. Like, I know in my head, I've said it on the air 10 times, 5:35 first pitch, 5:35 first pitch. Zach's pregame at 5. I know it's coming, but it's so weird for a 5:35, like 6 o'clock, 6:30, but 5:35, I can get through Craig Counsell's post-game show and still feel fine, especially we're recording this after game number 3. Gosh, that was barely over 2 hours.
Right. And you know what? You didn't want to miss a moment of this one. Shota Imanaga, Corbin Burns, two all-stars. And you mentioned Shota got that extra day's rest, and you could see he had a little bit more giddy up on that fastball. Looked a little dicey in the first inning with one out. Adley Rushman walked and Ryan Mountcastle single, but Shota struck out Anthony Santander and Jordan Westberg to end the threat. But he threw 29 pitches that first inning. And again, you get nervous in that heat. I mean, these guys were soaking through their jerseys. Top of the second, one out. Christopher Morel hit his 16th home run to lead off the second. So Cubs up 1-0. Dansby and PCA followed that up with a couple of singles. Miguel Amaya struck out, but Nico Horner with a big 2-out RBI single to put the Cubs up 2-0. Speaking of 2-out hits, Michael Busch doubled, advanced to third on a Cody Bellinger ground out, and Zaya Suzuki had his turn for the 2-out RBI single to score Busch, and the Cubs were up 3-0. After that long first inning, Shota was able to keep the Orioles off the scoreboard, always getting big outs whenever he needed them. Bottom of the second, Austin Hayes hit a leadoff double. Imanaga was able to strand him. Bottom of the fifth, James McCann hit a ground rule double with one out. The O's stranded him as well. Bottom of the sixth was the most nerve-wracking. Ryan Mountcastle led off with a single. Anthony Santander flied to right, and then Jordan Westberg hit one 404 feet that hit the top of the wall, went for a double to put runners at second and third with one out, but Shota dug deep and struck out Austin Hayes and Jorge Mateo to end the threat. Dustin, that ball hit by Westberg would have been a home run in 29 out of 30 MLB parks. The only one it wasn't was Camden Yards. Thank God they moved the fences back on that one.
Yeah, it's just like the baskets at Wrigley sometimes, right? So you got to deal with that stuff.
Right? Shota pitched 6 shutout innings, gave up 6 hits, 1 walk, and 6 Ks. Great ending to an all-star first half for Shota. Luke Little was first out of the pen. This gets a little weird. He got the first out, but then he hits James McCann with a pitch. Gunnar Henderson singled to put runners on first and second. Luke got Adley Rushman to an 0-2 count, but then the rain came pouring down. Little was kind of irritated about the whole thing. There was a 19-minute delay. After the delay, Luke comes right back out. He throws one pitch, a strikeout for Rushman, and Luke's nights is done. Porter Hodge comes in, gets the final out of that inning. Porter Hodge also pitched the scoreless 8th. Top of the 9th, 2 outs. Nico had a nice hustle double and came around to score on a Michael Busch single. Add a little insurance. Cubs leading 4-0. Heart attack. Hector Neris comes out in the 9th, gave up a 1-out single, then got Gunnar Henderson to ground into a double play to end the game. Cubs win, and at this point we know now they won the series, Dustin. But this is what Marquee put up at the time, and it just shows you how bad the Cubs have been struggling. It was their first 3-game win streak since April 26. They clinched their first road series win since May 10th to the 12th at Pittsburgh. They secured their first back-to-back series win since mid-April when they beat Seattle and Arizona and started 2-0 in a road series for the first time in 2024. That just gives you an idea why the Cubs are kind of where they are.
Right. Absolutely right. Great stats there. Great job sharing that with the audience. All right, Crawly. So we've got
one more thing though on that game, just to get you a little bit nervous. Cody Bellinger hitting the left hand, pulled from the game. Miles Mastrobuoni came in. And this is kind of one of those bizarre things too, Dustin. This was before this game, Corbin Burns versus the Cubs. This is 5 starts Corbin Burns has faced the Cubs, now 6 since winning the 2021 NL Cy Young Award. He's lost the last 6 starts against the Cubs.
It's pretty amazing. Now, do you think that is more the Cubs knowing him, or do you think last night, at least, do you think the manager was involved in that, knowing him so well?
I just think that sometimes, for whatever reason, why is Kyle Hendricks so good against San Francisco and so bad against Atlanta? Doesn't even matter who's on the team. Some teams just got your number. I can't explain it. It's one of those weird baseballisms. Yeah,
very solid point there, Crawly. And unfortunately, we have our fingers crossed with Cody Bellinger, but as we'll tell you later, it's not great news. But there is good news in Cubdom, because as we told you, the Cubs are going to sweep this thing, and they are going to shut the Orioles out for a second time. How about Justin Steele going in game number 3? He's coming off of that complete game back Friday, so probably a week ago from when you're listening to this. Seems like 2 weeks ago to me, I'll tell you. But Justin Steele on the bump for the 3rd game in this series.
Yeah, he was taking on Albert Suarez, and so the Cubs offense continues to collectively, as a team, swing the bat well. And this was the first game without Cody Bellinger in the lineup. And so I was very curious to see how they would do. The Cubs started scoring in the top of the third with 2 outs. Michael Busch walked and scored on a Seiya Suzuki double to put the Cubs up 1-0. The Cubs added 3 more in the 6th with one out. Tomas Nido single, followed by 3 doubles in a row by Nico Hoerner, Michael Busch, and Seiya Suzuki to put the Cubs up 4-0. That was in the 4th inning. Sorry. Dansby Swanson added a solo home run in the 5th to make it 5-0. And the Cubs added 3 more in the 6th on a Seiya Suzuki triple, an Ian Happ double, and an RBI single by Dansby Swanson to put the Cubs up 8-0. Dustin, the Cubs scored 8 runs on 13 hits. Dansby hit a home run. Seiya hit a triple and 2 doubles.
Dansby hit a home run. Did you hear that, everybody? Dansby Swanson hit a home run.
Yep. Seiya with a triple and 2 doubles. Michael Busch with 2 doubles. Nico and Happ each had a double. The Cubs' first 7 run, Dustin, were all on base hits, and the home run by Dansby was a solo home run. Yeah. The Cubs were 4 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Dustin,
now those are kind of numbers that'll help you win.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned that this was his first start since throwing a complete game. Justin Steele was also his birthday today. Happy birthday, Justin. And he dominated the Orioles. He pitched 7 shutout innings, giving up only 3 hits, no walks, and 4 Ks. He sat down the first 11 batters he faced before Ryan Mountcastle hit a 2-out double. Jorge Mateo hit a double in the 5th, and Anthony Santander doubled in the 7th. 3 hits given up by Steele, all doubles, and he stranded them all. Although one of those, I want to say it was the Mountcastle one, the very first one, was a bad play by Seiya Suzuki defensively. Dustin, we talked about it on the last podcast. All 3 errors that Seiya has committed this season have happened on Justin Steele's start. There was another one that he missed in San Francisco that wasn't called an error. There was this one tonight. I truly think that there's something in his head. I would not let Seiya Suzuki play right. Let him DH when Justin Steele is on the mound. That is my recommendation for Craig Counsell. But speaking of Justin Steele, our guy Chris Kompka has this up on Twitter. Justin Steele in his last 9 starts, 1.48 ERA, 61 innings pitched, 58 Ks, 12 walks. He's only given up 2 home runs, a 180 opponent's batting average. That is ace stuff, Dustin.
That is ace stuff indeed. And you had your other ace, your all-star, going the game before. And now, Crawly, I'm just thinking, I'm just saying, people in the know said if somehow the Cubs can rebound from this terrible 2 months that they've had and get into the postseason, the starting pitching might just be good enough to keep you around a little bit.
Well, the injury to Cody Bellinger really hurts you.
Right.
He is one of the guys that can provide pop. And what you saw tonight by Busch, remember at the beginning of the year, I said Seiya Suzuki to me was going to be this team's MVP. I felt
needed to be, right? He needed to be, right.
That was my prediction, that he was going to be the MVP of this team. You need Ian Happ. You need Nico Hoerner. You got all these guys that have been performing under expectation. The starting pitching has been good all year. The defense, when we look at the tail of the tape, the Cubs defense and the bullpen is really improving. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about buying and selling, but the Cubs just have a lot of guys that are going to be coming back in the second half. You saw Mark Leiter back in this series. You're going to have Julian Merriweather coming back soon. You are going to, as all these guys get healthy, it almost may be like the equivalent of trading for bullpen help. And so you may not have to be,
that's a great point.
Right. You may not have to be a buyer. Now you might want to buy to get a power bat because you don't know how long you're going to be out without Cody Bellinger. I mean, thankfully this happened right by the All-Star break. I mean, these guys heal pretty quickly. Nico had one where his hand hurt, and I don't know exactly how long. We don't have the medicals on him. He's going to be on the 10-day IL, but I'm just very curious to see as these guys start to come back and they get healthier. You got Caleb Killian. You got, like I said, Julian Merriweather, hopefully Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks. These are all guys that are going to make your Javier Assad's going in for the Cardinals series. He's pitching. All of these guys coming back, that could really, really make a difference in helping this team turn it around.
Yep. No doubt about it. That you are 100% right, Crawly. it's a good time. It's a good time to be a Cubs fan, and now it gets extra real as the Cubs are en route to St. Louis to take on the Cardinals for 4 huge games. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It is season 3. It's episode 56. The Cubs ambush the O's. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Leave us one of those 5-star reviews. You can email us at flythew670gmail.com. And don't forget, you can watch us. That's right. Watch this podcast on the 670 The Score YouTube page. In this segment, Crawly's talking to Greg Hughes of North Side Bound to get an update on the current prospect rankings, which prospects are moving their way up and which ones haven't reached their potential so far this season.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, we have our old friend Greg Hughes. He is a writer for Northside Bound, the best place to find all your prospect info. Greg, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good to be back. Good to talk prospects. It's I guess we kind of got to talk prospects because it's not always fun talking about the major league squad. So that's where I come into play, right?
Right, and not only that, is that if things don't go good for the Cubs, we may be seeing more of these prospects up in Chicago sooner rather than later. So. And a guy that's on your prospect list, and for people that are not aware, northsidebound.com, which is your website, you guys are, focus on the prospects, and you have your top 30 prospect list, and many of the different writers, whether it's you or Todd Johnson or Rich Biesterfeld, you guys kind of, give fans what your outlook is on the best prospects in the system. And one of the guys on your list looked mighty good last night when you're talking about Hunter Biggie.
Yeah. It's a big week at Northside Bound this week. Like you said, it's our prospect list week. So we're all dropping our own individual top prospect list, and it's going to follow up at the very end with our kind of cumulative Northside Bound ranking. But yeah, I have Hunter Biggie in there at number 18 on my prospect list right now, and that's actually behind Porter Hodge, one slot behind Porter Hodge, who for our purposes is a prospect. We had the cutoff of July 1st. If we made the list right now, he would not be eligible for the prospect ranking. But one slot behind Porter Hodge. Hunter Biggie's good, man. He's a fun guy to have followed during his time coming up through the system. He was a Harvard player when he was drafted. He was actually a two-way player during his time at Harvard. Posted an OPS over 800 as a hitter during his time there. And then as soon as he came into the Cubs farm system, just started throwing bullets. Started hitting mid to high 90s with the fastball, and the secondary stuff has gotten progressively better and better every single year that we've seen him in the system. You saw some of the cutters and sliders and curveballs yesterday. And the secondary stuff to go along with heat that touches triple digits is always fun to see.
Right. And what I like about how you set up your list is you kind of divide it up into 3 tiers. Tier 3, notable prospects, but plenty of things needed to break right for them to log meaningful MLB innings is what you said. And then you kind of have your tier 2 prospects. These are guys that, in your opinion, are successful player development means. Several of these guys are going to log MLB innings. And then, of course, the top tier. And when you look at the top tier, a lot of familiar names. But before we get to that top tier, I wanted to kind of start at tier number 3 that we were looking at. And you kind of gave your likes and dislikes of each players. And there's a couple that, for me, I'm kind of curious about. Frankie Scalzo Jr., I just got to say, this is one that's near and dear to my heart because he's the first prospect we ever had on the podcast. What's going on with Frankie Scalzo?
Yeah, Frankie Scalzo's had an incredible year. I mean, he's near and dear to my heart, too. I think that if you listen to the Cubs on Deck podcast that I host every week, I think Frankie comes up in conversation every single episode. I think it's just to take a shot if we mention Frankie Scalzo Jr. So, Frankie he got up to a really hot start this year. During his time in AA Tennessee, he ended up not allowing a single run during his time there, during his few months there. I think it ended up being 22 innings that he threw in Tennessee without allowing a run. He got called up to AAA Iowa just because it's kind of like when you put up those numbers that are that good, you deserve that promotion up to the highest level of the minors. He's run into some I wouldn't say problems, but he's finally faced some adversity during his time in AAA, which is good. He needs to see that. He's got a really good slider. Frankie Scalzo Jr. The slider is the go-to pitch. The fastball sits in the mid-90s. The stuff isn't quite as electric as you see from Porter Hodge or Hunter Biggie, but he's a true in my eye, a one-inning reliever is Frankie Scalzo Jr. And so he's just a step away from the major leagues. I think that he could be on that short list of guys that get called up this year, especially given what we might see from the trade deadline this year and how the Cubs are competing in the second half. But also it's important to remember that Frankie Scalzo Jr. is Rule 5 eligible this offseason. So he'll need to be added to the 40-man roster if the Cubs want to protect him from that Rule 5 draft. So Frankie has been good. One of my favorites in the entire organization to watch game in and game out. I have him ranked as the number 26 prospect in the organization right now.
And another guy, again, near to dear to my heart is Pablo Aliendo. He caught my first pitch when I was down at South Bend, and he's a guy that, you know, the catcher position, it's kind of been a little bit shaky, dicey this year, and you just wonder, you know, I know Pablo Aliendo doesn't bring a lot to the bat, but I'm just, you know, is there a guy defensively that you think could potentially help out in the short term? Let's say in the next year or two.
The catching prospects in the organization, I don't think there's a starting catcher in the system right now, in the entire organization right now, in terms of a starting catcher for a playoff caliber team. You look at the major league level and you got Miguel Amaya there. I don't think he's a starting caliber catcher for a playoff contending team, obviously. Moises Ballesteros has his own separate concerns where, like, I don't think that he sticks a catcher behind the plate. Bryce Wyndham is in AAA. I think that he is really good defensively, and I think that he's a great guy to have on your roster, but I don't think he's a starting catcher. I think he can be a number 2 or number 3 catcher in the big leagues. Pablo Aliendo, though, I think Pablo Aliendo in a lot of ways is cut from the same cloth as Miguel Amaya during his time coming up through the system. So Pablo Aliendo has a lot of pop. He's he's slugging a lot during his time in Tennessee right now, which is unique because it's really tough to hit in the AA Southern League right now. So he's showing off a lot of pop. Unfortunately, he's striking out at incredible rates. Like, he's striking out, like, I think 36% of the time during his time in Tennessee. Right now, he's still battling back from he had a wrist injury earlier this year. So he's still working his way back from that injury right now. He's down in Mesa rehabbing as we speak. But behind the plate defensively, I think that there's still a lot of receiving that he needs to work on behind the plate and blocking. The arm is pretty decent back there. I like what he can do defensively with his arm, but he's just not really a complete prospect quite yet. I'm excited to see him hopefully return to AA Tennessee this season and then get some work behind the plate in AAA Iowa next year. He's another guy who is Rule 5 eligible after this year. So, like, the Cubs are going to have a really, really tough time deciding on what, if they're adding Pablo Aliendo to the 40-man roster. I think his return from injury this year is going to tell us a lot about what, if the Cubs believe in him long-term as an answer behind the plate in Chicago.
One last guy on the tier 3 list, that would be Nasir Mule. I'm just curious, is he somebody that you think they're going to allow to continue to be a two-way player, or do you think they're going to have him just focus on the pitching?
Yeah, so he's been converted over to just pitching now, and he's found his way up to Myrtle Beach. He's just a super, super raw prospect, right? Like, he got converted to being a pitcher only starting this, I guess it was probably last season, but like full-time this season. And during his time on the mound, like, the stuff is very clearly nasty. He's been working out of the rotation mostly in Myrtle Beach, but he's not going a whole lot of innings there. He's still a work in progress. Obviously, electric fastball up in the high 90s. The slider is really, really good. He just can't locate anything, and you can't really blame him from a teenager that has yet to focus on only pitching until this year, you know? So he's still got a ways to go, but like, the fact that the Cubs had confidence enough to pull him up to Myrtle Beach in full season ball this year is honestly kind of amazing.
Now, one guy that I saw in Myrtle Beach last year and popped my eyes open was Michael Arias. And I guess, you know, I see so many teams that have guys out of the bullpen that can just throw heat. And I think that's why we got excited with Hunter Biggie and you know, Porter Hodge, those kind of guys. We need guys out of the pen that miss bats. And to me, Michael Arias has been a guy I've been, like I said, ever since I went to Myrtle Beach, I came back. I haven't stopped talking about him. And I'm just curious how you feel like he's doing right now. Yeah,
I like Michael Arias a lot. The stuff's pretty nasty. The fastball is, again, mid to high 90s. With some serious movement. The movement profile on that fastball, it's kind of a sinker that mimics the movement on his changeup. His changeup, in my opinion, is still his best pitch. It just drops off the table. Really good movement. A lot of swing and miss on that changeup. My concerns with Michael Arias is that it's tough to kind of project a guy that has a changeup as his best offering. Like that's not really like a common thing to see, you know, where a changeup out of the bullpen is a guy's best pitch. And he is very clearly a reliever at this point. He does have a slider that flashes pretty good every once in a while, but it's like not very consistent. So I like the electricity from Michael Arias. I think he's a good player. It's harder for me to project him compared to a guy like Hunter Biggie or Porter Hodge, or even a guy like Luke Little or Daniel Palencia. Like they're all, those guys are easier to project even as relievers than Michael Arias, even though his fastball changeup are really, really good.
Right. Now, you know, one of the guys I really wanted to see that didn't have a good season last year in Myrtle Beach was Christian Hernandez, but he seems to have kind of bounced back a little bit this season.
Yeah, he bounced back in a way that is, he just looks like a different player entirely. The at-bats are much better. The at-bats, they look more like he has a plan when he comes up to the plate. I think that he's done a much better job of hunting for his pitch. Now, the power is not really showing itself quite yet. We kind of had this vision of Christian Hernandez as being this like 25 home run guy playing shortstop. And right now, I think I'm looking at a guy that has figured out a way to cut down his swing and miss. But because of that, he's making more contact and less like true pop and power. So he's going to be a long play. What I'm seeing from him in Myrtle Beach is like super exciting. Not from the standpoint of like he's a top 3 prospect in the system. I have Christian Hernandez ranked as the number 12 prospect in the organization. He's not a top 3 guy. He's not a top 5 guy. But coming into this year, I had him ranked down right around 30. I think I had him ranked number 29 coming into the season. So like the fact that he's gone from this highest of high to like really bottoming out to now he's more established as a player. I think that the ceiling isn't as high as it once was, but the floor isn't as low as it once was. He's kind of finding that middle ground, which I think is super important. He's still super young. We'll see how he continues to perform over the course of this season. Maybe it's in Myrtle Beach. Maybe he gets a call up to South Bend post-draft chaos. We'll see. But I'm excited to see what Christian Hernandez is doing this season and continues to do.
Right. And when we, you know, just rounding off the top, the tier 2, Jackson Wiggins is a name that all of a sudden, you know, a guy that's coming back from injury and you kind of said, hey, he's playing at low A, but let's kind of keep an eye on this guy.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he is coming back from Tommy John and he's made his way back to full season ball, and he's putting up numbers in the way that he is, between the strikeout to walk ratio, the ERA he's putting up, how he looks in terms of again flashing high 90s fastball, the slider looks really good. Like this was not what I expected from Jackson Wiggins this soon returning from Tommy John. Like this shouldn't have been expected, and it's happening. So that's why I have him ranked number 8, which is just outside of that top tier of players, that big 7 of players the Cubs have as top 100 guys. Jackson Wiggins is the next guy up for me, and I think that like, there is a big gap between number 7 and Jackson Wiggins at number 8. But Jackson Wiggins leading that charge of like the next best prospects in the organization. He's got a long way to go. I'm curious to see how much they continue to use him in Myrtle Beach this year before they call him up to South Bend. That's worth keeping an eye on. But man, to me, it's just the fact that he is throwing and succeeding in terms of numbers in the way that he is this quickly after his return to full season ball.
Now, when we get into tier 1, all of these names are very familiar to all our listeners. When you talk about Kevin Alcantara at 7, Jefferson Rojas at 6, James Triantos at 5, Moises Ballesteros at 4, Matt Shaw at 3, Owen Casey at 2, and then Cade Horton hopefully recovering well at number 1. That you know, for the most part, when you talk, especially the top 3 or 4, you get a general consensus from most people. Jefferson Rojas, again, I went down to Myrtle Beach to watch Christian Hernandez, and my eyes were completely locked on Jefferson Rojas. I just saw him down at South Bend. What are we seeing from Jefferson Rojas at the next level?
Yeah, so Jefferson Rojas, I actually internally, without publishing it, I had Jefferson Rojas as high as number 3 on my prospect rankings earlier this year. I bumped him down to 6. That's not really a knock on him because this tier of players, like you could really, I listen to an argument in any order of these dudes. Like they're just so close and so tough to rank against each other because they are all top 100 prospects at this point. So it's so tough to rank them against each other. Jefferson Rojas, I think I'm just taking like the slower approach. I'm like trying to like talk myself down off Rojas to say like, hey, let's be cool. Let's be cool. Let's like wait for it to actually play out. The pop isn't really showing up in South Bend. he's a teenager, right? He just turned 19 this year. The pop isn't showing up, but the body looks like one that the pop will eventually start to show up. He's not swinging and missing. He's playing decent defense at shortstop. The movements and motions look like a big league caliber player. It's the numbers across the board. Like, you're gonna look at the numbers and be like, oh, what's Greg looking at here? Like, why is he a top 6 prospect in the organization? I get it. Like, the numbers aren't ridiculous, but important to remember, like, that he is 19 years old. He is in high A when he's a few years. Like, I think he's like 3.5 years younger than the average player at that level, maybe 2.5. But it's important to remember, like, there's still a lot of growth to happen with Jefferson Rojas. I just really like what he's about. Like, that, this is like you can scout the stat line, you can scout the way a guy looks. Like, he's got a little bit of both, but like, watching him play is something else, man.
Now, as far as Moises Ballesteros is concerned, you kind of touched on it right there. It just, do you see him being a full-time DH? Because, it doesn't seem like it's happening behind the plate. He seems really, people are talking about the height of Michael Busch. Imagine, Moises Ballesteros shorter than that. Where do you see him? You said in your write-up that he's the most complete hitter in the system. What do you see? Where do you see him ultimately playing?
Yeah, I think he's a DH, and that's fine. I think it's fine that he's a DH. I mentioned in my write-up that this is, with Moises Ballesteros ranked at number 4, this is the highest I've ever, in my time ranking prospects and covering the Cubs system, this is the highest I've ever ranked a player that I view as a first base or DH. I've never ranked a guy this high. And that's a testament to how good Moises Ballesteros is at the plate. Behind the plate, I should think I'm more impressed with him behind the plate than I was last year. I think that, like, it's fine behind the plate. It's not good by any means. I just don't foresee him being a catcher in Chicago this year or into the future. The good news is that the bat is good enough, whether it's his ability to put bat on ball and his feel to hit, his ability to hit the ball to all fields, display power to left center, in addition to pulling the ball to right field, the way he works counts, the way he limits strikeouts, is everything at the plate. Like, he can be a DH. I don't think that, like, he's a guy that you pencil in as he's a number 3 or number 2 hitter in your lineup for the next 8 years. But I think that, like, he's a good middle of the order bat. I think he can bat number 5, like in the 5 hole for you for the few years. And I think he can be very good with that. So yeah, I think that Moises Ballesteros, even if he's not a catcher, that's fine. It puts more pressure on the bat, obviously, if he's not behind the plate. But I think it's good enough that Brian Smith and I on our podcast recently got to talking about Moises Ballesteros, and, like, Brian mentioned that we have been putting so much emphasis on the fact that Moises Ballesteros is not good behind the plate that it's kind of detracted from the fact that he's really good at the plate. And, like, whenever we rank him, it's like, oh yeah, he's a good hitter, but he can't stick at catcher. It's like, maybe he's just a good hitter. Maybe we just focus on that. And I think that's important. I think the big thing with Moises Ballesteros I keep hearing a lot is, like, oh, maybe he can catch twice a week. Maybe he can catch once a week. And, like, yeah, I hear that argument, but that just doesn't really happen in the major leagues. Like, outside of, like, a guy like Mitch Garver has done that for the past few years or so for Texas and now Seattle. Like, that player doesn't exist. There's no example of a player catching twice a week and playing DH and first base the rest of the time. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I can't think of anybody. That was the same argument we had about Kyle Schwarber when he came up years ago. It's like, oh, maybe he can be a twice a week catcher. It's like, yeah, it's just, it doesn't really happen. Like, either you're a catcher or you're not a catcher. And I think Moises Ballesteros is not a catcher, and it's fine.
Now, a guy just named to the futures game, he wasn't initially put on it, is James Triantos. And, with all the whispers of possible Nico Horner trades, it's interesting that you got him at number 5.
Yeah, I think James Triantos has shown me a lot this year. He came into this season and I was a little bit lower on him. And I think part of that was because we know that James Triantos has, like, an elite bat to ball tool. Like, his ability to make contact is probably the best in the organization. It's him at number 1, and then you can toss in a whole bunch of other names, like, right behind him. James Triantos is one of the better bat to ball guys I've seen as I've covered this system. But outside of that, coming into this year, it was like, there may be some power potential in there. Maybe the defense wasn't good. The base running was, like, fine. Like, there wasn't a whole lot to latch onto besides the one skill set, and that was his hit tool. And that worried me. But this year he's shown his ability to steal a lot more bases. So you're throwing that speed mix into the equation, right? That's awesome. And that pairs well with his ability to make contact. And he's shown off that power potential a little bit more this year, which is terrific. So, like, he's becoming more of a complete player. I think the second base defense is still not, like, I wouldn't call it, like, I wouldn't call it real good. I think it's fine. I think it does the trick out there at second base. And so I see more of a complete player than I did before the season started. Now, he's still not going to go out there and get you 20 home runs, I think, at the major league level. He's not going to go out there and steal you 30 bases. But he's just bringing more to the table than he once did, and I think that's super important. I think that my comparison was something that we talked about in the 1060 West Discord channel quite a bit. Is the comparisons for James Triantos are looking at a guy like Jeff McNeil over the course of his career, or Alex Verdugo, who's playing for New York right now. Like, that kind of profile is what you look at for a peak for James Triantos. And I think that's fine. I think that's a good peak value is Jeff McNeil, Alex Verdugo. It's a Nico Horner starter pack, but then add a little more pop, take out that elite defense, take out some speed. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's like a all-star caliber player, but I think he's a real solid player.
Now, one player that will also be joining Triantos at the Futures game is Matt Shaw. And Matt disappeared for a little bit, and that got me worried after that collision. He had a nasty collision during a game, and he was gone for a little while. He played for a couple more days, but then kind of disappeared. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything about the reason he wasn't playing?
Yeah, I think he was a little banged up. He was a little banged up and working his way back. But we saw him return back to the lineup yesterday on Tuesday, which was super exciting to see him back. And I think that the fact that James Triantos actually replaced Owen Casey as an injury replacement on the Futures game roster and not Matt Shaw is encouraging to see Matt Shaw back in action. That's super fun to see. I think with Matt Shaw, it's been interesting this season because we saw him get off to a real hot start, and that was super exciting. And then he really tailed off really bad. But his ability to continue to draw walks and still be a valuable player, even though he was slumping at the plate, was awesome. He still kind of battled through it, and he came back stronger on the other end. But like now he's really back to hitting the ball really well. Before he was out for a week or so, and so I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Matt Shaw this season and how he's growing as a player overall.
And then Owen Casey, number 2, and you know, what is he kind of dealing with right now that he will not be playing in the Futures game? And could you see a potential call up for Owen Casey later on this season?
Yeah, I think that Tommy Birch over the Des Moines Register reported that it was a back injury or just some back tightness from Owen Casey. Nothing we should worry about too awful bad. But yeah, I think that Owen Casey is an exciting player. In terms of seeing him in Chicago, it's probably going to depend on what the Cubs look like post deadline. You can see Owen Casey still growing as a player day in and day out, right? Like, you get different versions of Owen Casey in like 2 or 3 week stretches where it's like for 3 weeks, he's this like, let me find a way to pull the ball in the air and really show off that power. And then for 3 weeks, it's like, okay, let me continue to work the opposite way and limit these strikeouts. And then the week after that, it's like, all right, let me try to merge those together. It's not quite there, but like, we're seeing just different versions of Owen Casey every so often. And that's different than like Moises Ballesteros, who like Moises knows exactly who he is as a hitter, right? Like he is very clear who he is. Owen Casey has a lot of abilities, and I think he's trying to find a way for it to all merge. And I think that figuring that out at the major league level is probably a disservice to him as a prospect. I think that unless you're pulling him up to be a middle of the order bat to help this team make the playoffs, I don't see the purpose of calling Owen Casey up to Chicago, because you can look at him and see the adjustments he's making. He's still putting up great numbers. Don't get me wrong. He's been very successful in different ways. I just want to be sure that he knows who he is before he gets that next challenge in Chicago, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And last thing for you here, Greg, and I appreciate your time, is that, you know, everyone talks about buying and selling, and I don't know if the Cubs really can do either at this point. I don't know if they have a bunch of things that people want, and I don't think there really is I don't see them buying as well. But I think about how the bullpen has been such a huge weakness for the Cubs this season. But now that I look, you know, kind of going to the post All-Star break, I see a lot of guys getting healthy and guys that can change the makeup of what that bullpen. And it's been, you can see the change recently when you talk about like Javier Assad coming back, Hunter Biggie called up, Ben Brown hopefully coming back soon, Porter Hodge, Caleb Killian just started at South Bend the other day, Luke Little. These are all guys you're very, very familiar. Daniel Palencia, you know, Ethan Roberts is down there. You know, Jordan Wicks, and then Hayden Wesniewski had a great start the other day. I just have a feeling that maybe with all of these guys returning from injuries and being in the minors, that the pitching staff and the bullpen in particular, it may be like, trading for a bunch of good arms with all these guys getting healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's been so many injuries. When you entered this season, you were worried about the depth of the bullpen, right? And that ended up showing itself pretty immediately, where you had a whole bunch of injuries, and the prospect type relievers that were down in the minors were not quite ready. Like they all started in Double-A. And so you had the Porter Hodges and the Hunter Biggies and guys like that and Michael Arias and all those guys that were in Double-A Tennessee. And it's like they're just a step away. They can't be called up early on in the season. Maybe the second half they can help, but those injuries all happen in the first half, which is kind of like weird. Like you typically see that attrition like throughout the season, and then it like hits hard in like August and September, and that's when you can call up those prospects that were going to be ready. It just kind of hit at a weird time. And you're right. I think that like there's a lot of dudes that can help that bullpen. Now, not all of them are going to be good. Not all of Hunter Biggie and Ethan Roberts and Luke Little and Daniel Palencia and Michael Arias, if he gets called up, like all these guys like are not going to be good at the same time. And they're not all going to be guys that are closing down games in the ninth and eighth innings for the Chicago Cubs. But I think there's enough talent there, including Hayden Wesneski if he gets moved to the bullpen, or Ben Brown if he gets called back up from injury and he goes to the bullpen, things like that. I think there's enough talent there that you can put together a solid bullpen. I'm not saying it's going to be a top 5 bullpen in the game, but I'm not saying it's going to be it's definitely not going to be a top or a bottom 10 bullpen in the game, So like, I think there's enough talent there to be a good bullpen.
Well, Greg, tell our listeners again, we said Northside Bound, you have your top 30 prospects list. You guys are releasing them again. Rich Biesterfeld, Todd Johnson, a lot of brilliant minds there. Where can our listeners follow you on the social, and where can they listen to you on your podcast?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can check out all of written work from this week's prospect list week over at northsidebound.com. You can find me and Greg Zumak, Todd Johnson, Rich Biesterfeld, Rich Kalezi. We're going to do a combined list. We have a fan created poll that we're going to post as well, having the fans make their own prospect list, which is super fun. Go check that out. So it's a fun week. And then at the end of this week on Sunday is the MLB draft. And that is just, it's a crazy time for prospects right now between the trade deadline coming up, the All-Star break, the heart of minor league baseball game action, and then also the draft thrown in the mix. So the Northside Bound crew will be live on YouTube over at the Northside Bound YouTube channel, covering the draft as it's happening. We're going to be there live from pick number 1 of the draft all the way up to the Cubs pick at number 14. And then we'll stick around after the Cubs pick at 14 to kind of break down and analyze who they ended up selecting. So come check us out there over at the Northside Bound YouTube page. That'll be a blast with all of our guys. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Crawly.
Anytime, Greg, and let's hope that these prospects pan out. I know not all of them will, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed, buddy.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It is episode 56 of season number 3. The Cubs have ambushed the O's, and don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Leave a 5-star review. You can email Crawly and I at flythew670@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can watch us. That's right. Watch us podcast this thing on the 670 to Score YouTube page. So Crawly, after a few wins against the O's, how are things looking standings wise?
Unfortunately, we're kind of in a little bit of a traffic jam. At least, going into tonight's game, the Cubs have a 3-game win streak, but it's still Milwaukee, 54-39, followed by St. Louis, the Cubs' next opponent, 48-44. Cincinnati's 45-49, Pittsburgh 44-48. The Cubs are 44-49, but with a little 3-game win streak going prior to tonight's game.
Going into the game tonight. All right, and then they've got obviously a big set of 4 games, including a doubleheader on Saturday. That's for a makeup. This is not one of Crawly's 4-game series that he hates so much. This is actually a 4-game. We're going to get to that in a minute, but as we talked about earlier, Crawly, the bad news, when there's good news, there's always got to be a little bit bad news because we are Cub fans. Cody Bellinger hitting the hand, left middle finger. He's going to be on the 10-day IL for at least a little bit.
Yeah, that it just seems like this season's really kind of been snake bit, and just when they're starting to get rolling, and we're going to preview the pitching matchups, they're facing nothing but right-handers in St. Louis. you're going to lose a left-handed bat like Belly. After the game, he was pulled in the 7th. Masterboni comes in. He said it was a little swollen, a little bit of pain. I went to the dugout and gripped a baseball, and I just couldn't trust myself if I needed to make a throw. So I decided to come out of the game. The correspondent move, Alexander Canario, is back from Iowa. He's in Baltimore, but he is not starting game 3.
How do you feel about that as the call-up? Do you think that that was the right move? Is there somebody else you thought should have gotten it? Anybody else? Or is that the right way to go about it?
No, I think that's the right way to go about it. Just as long as you give him a chance to kind of get some starts. And that would be my only thing is if he's going to sit on the bench, then, you might as well go with a defense-oriented guy personally, like a Luis Vasquez. But if you're going to give him a chance to hit, maybe give him a couple games. Let's see what we got here.
Let's see what we got. All right, so some good news or some okay news. We've got the Bellinger news. That's bad news. But good news is that Kyle Hendricks threw a bullpen on Wednesday, and right now he is pointing in the direction to be down in St. Louis and back on the mound.
Yes, it looks like all good, pending, making sure, nothing weird pops up. But he's got a clean bill of health after his last bullpen on Wednesday. So he will be starting in St. Louis, barring some unforeseen occurrence. With this season, you can't count that out. Mark Leiter was activated on Tuesday after being on the IL since June 23rd with the right forearm strain. Ethan Roberts was sent to Iowa in the corresponding move.
And he already came in and did some good things later. They already gave him the ball, and he came in, had a 1-2-3-8.
Yep. And then Javier Assad threw a bullpen in Baltimore on July 9th. And just like Kyle Hendricks, we should see him in the Cardinals series, barring any unforeseen issues.
All right, so good news on the starting pitching front and a bullpen piece. Here we go. At least the best rivalry in the National League, at least for me, and I could argue the best rivalry in all of baseball. Cubs-Cardinals down in St. Louis.
Yep, the Cubs have faced the Cardinals 5 times this season. They're 1-4 against the Redbirds. That first game in St. Louis in May was postponed, like we were talking about, because of rain. In the second game, the Cubs had a 4-2 lead in the 8th, but Mark Leiter gave up 4 runs. Cubs added 2 in the 9th, but fell 1 short in a 7-6 loss. The third game of that series in St. Louis was another 1-run loss. Cubs were down 4-0. They made it 4-3 with an Ian Happ solo home run in the 9th, but once again came up short. The Cardinals came to Wrigley in June and took 2 of 3 from the Cubs. Kyle Gibson pitched a gem with the Cardinals winning 3-0 and the Cubs only having 3 hits the entire game. But Shota Imanaga was able to get the Cubs a win, pitching 7 innings of 1-run ball against the Cardinals. Ian Happ had a 3-run blast, which he likes to do, as the Cubs took game 2 5-1. And then the rubber match, Miles Michaelis and the Cards beat Jameson Taillon 3-2. Taillon gave up 2 runs, was the tough luck loser on that one.
Yeah, so the Cubs got to get the offense going, keep the offense going that they've had against the Orioles if they hope to do some damage, because based on those amount of runs scored, you don't win against anybody, let alone the Cardinals.
Right, and the Cardinals are 5-4 this month of July, winning series against the Pirates and Nationals, but they just lost a doubleheader on Wednesday against the Royals. Tuesday, they were rained out, so they rested Thursday, while the Cubs are going to have to fly from Baltimore to St. Louis. It's not a horrible trip, but still, they got to travel while St. Louis gets to rest a little bit.
Tail of the tape. There it is, the new sound effect, new feature on the Fly the W670 podcast. We got a little sound effect. That's a good sound effect too, Crawly.
Yeah, the budget's been increased, I think. When we take a look at the two teams, the St. Louis is ahead of them. St. Louis is ahead of the Cubs in most of these standings here. In batting average, St. Louis is 244. That's 16th in all of baseball, while the Cubs are 231. Have batting average, 24th in baseball. Slug, the Cardinals are slugging 383. That's good for 21st in the league, while the Cubs are slugging 372, which is 24th best in the league. Runners in the scoring position, it's been a bugaboo for both of these teams. The Cardinals have a slight edge. They are batting 229 with runners in scoring position, 27th in all of baseball, while the Cubs are right behind them, 223, 28th in all of baseball. Starting pitching ERA, the Cubs once again get the advantage on this one. Their starters ERA is 3.68. That's 7th in all of baseball, while St. Louis is 4.37, 21st. But Dustin, the next two categories, even though the Cubs are behind the Cardinals, I'm seeing big jumps lately. The reliever ERA goes to the Cardinals. It's 3.50 ERA, 6 in all of baseball. So they got a good bullpen. You got to get to their starters, which aren't that good. But as far as the Cubs relief, they're at 4.13, which is 16th in all of baseball. But they were before around 24, 25 for the longest time. So they're starting to kind of jump up to the middle of the pack there. Same with the defense. The Cardinals defense, they have 7 defensive runs saved, which is 14th in baseball, while the Cubs have 6 defensive runs saved, which is 17th. Again, 23rd and 24th most of the season. So you're starting to see the improvement show up in the numbers.
Yes, that's good. Up a tick, up a tick. Any tick up is a good thing. All right, game 1. We talked about it a few minutes ago. Kyle Hendricks, Sonny Gray. This is a Apple TV Plus game. So your only local coverage will be right on 670 The Score with Pat and Ron and Zach.
Can I just add something, though, there? If you do have Apple TV, there's a way on the sound of settings that you can get Pat and Ron with the beautiful picture on the Apple TV.
Oh,
so don't forget that.
Explain.
So there's a setting that you click on when you go to the settings and you go to audio. It'll have the Apple Plus announcers. It'll have the Cardinals announcers, and it'll have Pat and Ron. The radio streams.
So do you have to be like a subscriber to the Odyssey app in that situation?
No,
can you be out of market because it's Apple TV?
Yes, you can be out of market. You can be everything.
So like you could be in Las Vegas. You could be on Las Vegas with Apple TV and you could listen to Pat and Ron.
Correct. While watching a pure 1080p picture.
Yeah, the picture's gorgeous, no doubt. I've watched it. I watched it on a regular TV. I've watched it on a regular phone, smartphone. Picture's great. Outstanding.
Right. And you don't have to listen to announcers that don't know what they're talking about. You can listen to the Hall of Famer and the former All-Star, right?
Yep. Ron Coomer, 7 a.m. with Mully and Haw tomorrow. Not 8 a.m., 7 a.m. with Mully.
A little early. Oh, yeah. He's early for Coom Dog there.
Yep.
It's been a rough season for Kyle Hendricks between the results on the field and back issues. He's 1-7 with a 7.53 RA in 16 games. 11 of those starts with 47 Ks and 63 1/3 innings. Hendricks is 1-3 in his last 7 games, 4 of those starts. He had a little bounce back, which started against St. Louis on June 14th when he pitched 4 1/3 shutout innings after Jordan Wicks left his start with an injury. And then he had 2 really good starts against San Francisco. But then he gave up 7 runs in 3 2/3 innings against the Brewers and 2 runs in 2 innings against the Angels before being pulled with a back issue. Kyle is 13-4 lifetime against the Cardinals with a 2.62 ERA and 6-2 at Busch Stadium with a 4.75 ERA and 7 games started. The Cardinals as a team slash 230, 275, 369 against Hendricks, with Matt Carpenter going 13 for 58, Nolan Arenado 10 for 45, and Paul Goldschmidt 14 for 49. So let's hope, Kyle does pretty good against the Cardinals. He does good against the Giants. Let's hope that continues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sonny Gray is 9-5 with a 3.30 ERA and 16 games started with 115 strikeouts and 92 2/3 innings. Gray is 2-3 with a 4.20 ERA in his last 7 starts. So it's kind of bumped up a little bit compared to what he was doing. He gave up 5 runs in 5 innings in his last start against the Nationals. Now, Gray shut down the Cubs on May 26, pitching 5 scoreless innings and only giving up 1 hit. Gray is 5-3 lifetime versus the Cubs in 12 games started with a 2.76 ERA. Ian Happ is 6 for 13 against Gray. Nico is 2 for 8, and Dansby is 3 for 9. Sonny Gray features a 4-seam fastball, sweeper, cutter, and sinker.
Game number 2, or game number 2 and 3.
Yeah. Assad versus Lance Lynn, 1:15 p.m. for the first game. Assad is 4-3 with a 3.04 ERA and 16 games started with 79 strikeouts and 83 innings pitched. Dustin, Assad's been on the IL since June 24th with a right forearm extensor strain. Assad faced Sonny Gray and the Cardinals on May 26th. It didn't go well. He gave up 4 runs in 5 innings pitched. Assad is 0-2 against the Cardinals lifetime with a 2.95 ERA in 7 games. 2 of those starts. He's only played 1 game in Busch. He's 0-1 in Busch Stadium in 3 games with 1 start and a 7.11 ERA. So not so good in Busch Stadium here. Nolan Arenado, though, get this, is 0 for 9 against Assad. Nolan Gorman, 0 for 8 against Assad. And Paul Goldschmidt, 2 for 7. So let's see what happens on that one. Lance Lynn is 4-4 with a 4.48 ERA in 18 games, started with 86 strikeouts in 90 1/3 innings pitched. He's 2-1, though, with a 6.27 ERA in his last 7 games, including getting clobbered by the Nationals in his last start, giving up 10 runs in 2 2/3 innings. Get this, Lynn has not faced the Cubs this season, but he's 6-8 lifetime against the Cubs in 23 games with a 5.43 ERA. But surprisingly, not a lot of Cubs have seen Lynn. Ian Happ's the exception. He's 5 for 15. Dansby Swanson is 0 for 5. Lynn features a 4-seam fastball, a cutter, and a sinker.
I am surprised that more Cubs haven't seen him, to be honest with you, Crawly. That does surprise me. All right, then the nightcap, Hayden Wesniewski getting the ball.
Yep, versus Kyle Gibson, 7:15 Central Time. Hayden is 3-5 with 3.67 ERA in 23 games. 6 of those were starts. He has 53 strikeouts and 56 1/3 innings pitch. Hayden's had some struggles in his last few starts, giving up 3 runs in 4 innings against the Giants and 5 earned runs in 5 innings against the Phillies. The home run ball is what's been hurting him. But in his last start against the Angels, he pitched 6 1/3 shutout innings and only gave up 1 hit. Hayden has only pitched 1 inning of relief against St. Louis this season and is 0-1 lifetime against the Cardinals in 3 games with only 1 start and a 4.91 ERA. He's only pitched 2 2/3 innings at Busch. None of the Cardinals have more than 2 at-bats against Hayden, so a chance for him to build on that good start against the Angels.
Yeah, that was a good start.
Kyle Gibson is 7-3 with a 3.96 ERA in 17 games, started with 93 strikeouts and 97 2/3 innings pitched. He's struggled a bit lately, going 4-1 in his last 7 starts with a 4.19 ERA. He gave up 4 runs against Atlanta in 4 innings on June 26, 4 runs in 5 innings against Pittsburgh on July 2nd, and gave up 3 runs on 9 hits against the Nationals. So hopefully we're catching him at the right time. Again, he did really good against the Cubs on June 14th, pitching 7 scoreless innings and giving up only 2 hits. Kyle Gibson's 1-4 lifetime against the Cubs in 5 games, started with a 4.94 ERA. Dansby Swanson, 9 for 15 against Kyle. Ian Happ, 2 for 11, and Nico Horner, 1 for 7. Gibson features a sinker, sweeper, and cutter.
Game number 4, last game ahead of the All-Star break. Jameson Taillon, Miles Mikolas.
Yep, 115 start. Taillon, 6-4 with a 2.99 ERA in 15 games, started with 72 strikeouts in 87 1/3 innings. He's shut down some pretty high-power offenses in his last couple of starts. He only gave up 2 runs against the Phillies on the 4th of July and only 2 runs against the Orioles on Tuesday night. He's faced the Cardinals in both series this season. He got a no decision on May 25th, giving up 3 runs on 9 hits in 5 2/3 innings. He got the loss on June 16th, but we talked about that. Only 2 runs on 7 hits in 6 innings. Wasn't his fault. He's 5-2 in 14 games against the Cardinals with a 3.36 ERA. He's 3-0 at Busch Stadium in 5 games, started with a 2.20 ERA. But Nolan Arenado is 9 for 19 against JMO. Matt Carpenter, 7 for 26. And Paul Goldschmidt is 6 for 16. Miles Mikolas, I can't wait till this guy's done pitching. I'm kind of tired of him. He's 7-7 with a 4.88 ERA in 19 games, started with 75 strikeouts in 107 innings pitched. After a rough start, Mikolas has pitched better, going 4-1 with a 3.86 ERA in his last 7 games. Like JMO, Miles has pitched in both series against the Cubs. May 25th, he got no decision, giving up 3 runs in 6 innings. But he picked up the win at Wrigley on June 16th, giving up 1 run and 6 1/3 innings. Mikolas is 6-4 lifetime against the Cubs with a 2.62 ERA in 21 games, 19 of those starts. Ian Happ, 12 for 37 against Mikolas, and Nico is 11 for 27, and Dansby is 6 for 23. Mikolas features a 4-seamer, a slider, a sinker, and a curveball.
All right, very good. So there's our 4 pitching matchups coming up. All right, now the hot and the not, and I know 2 for sure on the hot. I know that Ian Happ and Michael Busch. Who else on the hot list for the Cubs, Crawly?
Yeah, Ian Happ is 9 for his last 21 with Michael Busch is 9 for his last 21 with 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, slashing 429, 455, and he's slugging 810. That's what we were hoping for. Nico Horner is 7 for his last 20 with a double, 4 RBIs, slashing 350, 391, 400. And Ian Happ, 5 for his last 17 with a home run, 5 RBIs. He's slashing 294, 400, and 471. On the not, Seiya has cooled off, but he's getting the hits when they matter. He's 4 for his last 20, but he has 1 home run and 5 RBIs. So he's slashing 200, 238, 400. But again, 5 RBIs in his last 7 games is nothing to sneeze at, right?
That's not, nope. And Dansby Swanson, I knew would be on the not list. He's got to get things turned around. He's had a couple of hits lately, but, you know, again, we talk about too little, too late. That might be the Dansby Swanson 2024 version of this season.
Yeah, he's 3 for 19. He's slashing 158, 200, 211. I mean, just getting almost next to nothing out of him offensively. Thomas Nido in the last 9 days is doing better than Dansby Swanson.
All right, so Cub fans have to watch out for who with the Cardinals.
It's the Nolan boys. You got Nolan Gorman is 10 for his last 22 with 5 RBIs, slashing 455, 478, 636. Nolan Arenado, you never like to see him hot. 10 for his last 26 with 1 home run, 4 RBIs, slashing 385, 407. As far as the not is concerned, Mason Wynn is 5 for his last 25. He's slashing 200, 259, 240. And then Dylan Carlson is 2 for his last 12, 167, 214, 167. Paul Goldschmidt's just kind of had an okay season. He's 6 for his last 28, 2 home runs though, and 3 RBIs. So even when he's struggling, he's still deadly. He can still, you know, he's batting slashing 214, 241, but he's slugging 464. So you just, again, you got to be careful, and he always does well against the Cubs.
Always does well against the Cubs. He has been known as a Cubs killer since he has been there. All right, Crawly, prediction time. I'll go first this time. That's okay. I'll take it. I'll take one for the team. You know, without Cody Bellinger in the lineup, and I'm happy Kyle Hendricks is back until I know which Kyle Hendricks the Cubs are getting. I'm glad Javier Assad is back, but is his bullpen going to get taxed with an Assad and a 2-2? I'm just going to be, I'm going to be realistic. I hope it's 3 out of 4, but I think if you're looking to invest, or if you want to be smart about it, I think this has got split written all over it. I wish our all-star was pitching against the Cardinals. This is where I have an issue with them moving him back a day. So I wish that he was starting the game on Sunday. I'd rather have 2 starts with him before the all-star break than 1 start, even though it was very good. 6 innings, 6 Ks, no runs, outstanding. But I would rather have him get the rest during the all-star break. It feels to me, as a conspiracy theorist, Crawly, that this is all set up so that he can pitch in that all-star game.
Again, it is a big deal for him to pitch in the all-star game. I know for you and me, it probably doesn't mean as much, but for him and for the MLB fan base, it does mean a lot. You saw getting that extra rest kind of gave him a little bit more giddy up on that fastball. So I think it was done to, look, and the Orioles are a very tough offense. And if you're going to have anyone against the Orioles, it's Shota Imanaga. But that hurts you because you got no Shota going. You got no Justin Steele. You got no Cody Bellinger. I think if you go 2 for 2, that's going to be huge if they can do that. But I never like 4-game series. I'll always take the split on them. But, hopefully the Cubs can do it and try to keep this momentum going. They have, a little bit of a win streak going in. They've had some good games lately. This is the best we've seen the Cubs since April. So I just want them to keep it going.
All right, Crawly, very good. You got 2 and 2. I've got 2 and 2. That's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Email us, flythew670gmail.com. And, of course, you can watch us. That's right. Look at Crawly and I by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, enjoy the weekend north of the Cheddar Curtain, and we'll get back at it for a couple of hits during the All-Star break.
Yep, absolutely. And Cub fans, hopefully you're going down to St. Louis to cheer on the team. Don't eat the pizza if you go to St. Louis. You'll get sick. These guys are beatable. Let's turn the season around. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!